What if I told you dark fantasy isn't just fiction anymore? It's an aesthetic, a coping mechanism, and Gen Z's favorite TikTok genre. So it's been a while since I've seen these contents in TikTok. I've first seen it probably way back 2023 or probably early 2024, where that wizard, I don't know, tiny wizard guy was trending. I don't know what his name is, but his videos are he's dressed up as a wizard and he's like lean on and walk while leaning. I don't know if that's the word for what he's doing. I don't know if it's leaning. And he's just gonna go in grocery store, disturb people there, and then suddenly there's this knight that has an armor who's made from duct tapes and basically tapes. Goes to save the restaurant and, fights off the wizard. But enough of that. Here's the deal. I know that you've seen it. Moody Forest, Blood Red Moons, Cursed Princess, some random armored dude sitting on a big rock. It's everywhere on your For You page. But here's the real question. Why are so many Gen Z, including me, obsessed with this strange, eerie, mystical world of dark fantasy? It didn't just show up overnight. Dark fantasy has always been around. Think about Pan's Labyrinth, The Witcher, Twilight, Shrek, or even the original fairy tales by the Brothers Grimm, if you know that. Which, by the way, were way darker than the Disney versions that we grew up with. But in 2023 and 2024, just like what I said earlier, something shifted. On TikTok, the dark fantasy aesthetic exploded. Not just in cosplay or fan edits, but it became a full-on vibe. Forest core meets goth, medieval weaponry next to this music playing right now, and then there's a random dude who's wearing like a pretty expensive costume of a realistic armor. But why? It wasn't just a trend, it's a language. Now let's be real, Gen Z didn't exactly grow up in fairy tale. Economic uncertainty? Check. Global pandemics? Just recently. Climate anxiety, political chaos, and digital burnout? All of the above. We were handed a world on fire and told, hey, make something out of it. So it's no surprise they turned it to a fantasy. Not that glittery kind, but the kind with sharp teeth. Now, dark fantasy gives Gen Z something that really doesn't. Like, a sense of control. In fantasy, you can be the chosen one. While in real life, you're refreshing job listings at 2 a.m. A way to romanticize struggle. Life's hard, but what if your depression was actually a curse from an ancient bloodline? Power through pain. Trauma in dark fantasy doesn't just break you, it transformed you. You become the monster, or you fall in love with one. It's like Gen Z looked at their trauma and said, well, I should at least make it look aesthetic. TikTok's short form, sound driven content is the perfect breeding ground for fantasy vibes. But here's the kicker. These aren't just videos, they're windows into alternative selves. One where you're not awkward and anxious, but a cursed oracle banished for your power. One where you're not sad for no reason. Your heart broken over a doomed elven lover. It's like cosplay, mixed with therapy. This aesthetic sits on the edge of something deeper. A kind of psychological survival tactic. Psychologists actually have a term for this. Maladaptive daydreaming. It's when someone escapes into fantasy to avoid emotional pain or stress. But TikTok doesn't treat it like disorder. It turns it into content. Now, not all dark fantasy contents is trauma-fueled. Some of it are just for fun. But for many, it's a way to safely externalize what they can't say out loud. And Gen Z is statistically the most anxious, most depressed, and most therapy-seeking generation in modern history. So no, it's not just a cool genre. It's a cry, masked as magic. Now here's the dark side of the dark fantasy obsession. No pun intended. While escaping into fantasy feels good, too much of it can isolate people further. If your identity becomes tragic cursed soul, how do you act normal at a family dinner? If you're constantly romanticizing pain, do you start subconsciously seeking it? Or if your whole online persona is a knight in shining armor who's never scared, can you ask for help when you're really struggling? Fantasy is powerful, but it can also trap you. And the TikTok algorithm, it loves to trap you in the same loop. If you interact with dark content, you get more of it. The sadness spiral deepens. The fantasy gets darker. The character gets lonelier. The captions get scarier. You don't even realize it until you scroll back and think, wait, when did everything started looking like a Tim Burton movie? But here's where it gets interesting. This isn't just a trend. It's a new form of self-expression, a new genre of identity. And in some ways, this is actually healthy. Because turning your pain into art, that's been around forever. From Edgar Allan Poe to Evanescence, from Shakespeare's Ophelia to Netflix Wednesday, we've always loved the beauty in sadness. People like to say, oh, Gen Z will move on, it's just a trend. But maybe not, because the dark fantasy aesthetic speaks to something much deeper. A generation who's scared, burned out, and unsure if the real world will ever feel safe. So they made their own world, one with magic, with monsters, with meaning. And that's powerful. It might not always be healthy. It might need boundaries, but it's real, and it matters. This isn't about crowns and swords and vampires. It's about survival. Oh, but with style. So now what? If you're a Gen Z who lives for this aesthetic, ask yourself, are you using it to express or escape? Is it helping you connect or pushing you deeper into isolation? Is your pain being processed or just posted? The point isn't to give it up. The point is to understand why it speaks to you. Because behind every tragic royal in exile, TikTok is a real person with real feelings, using fantasy to stay afloat in a chaotic world. And honestly, that's kind of beautiful. I hope you liked this video. Thank you so much if you've reached the end of it. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe, and comment about what you think about this video. Thank you so much.